Hey guys, welcome to the NFL Week 5 betting preview. Right here, I'm going to go through all the remaining matchups from this week. We've only had the one game so far between Tampa Bay and Atlanta, with Atlanta getting over the line in overtime. But for the rest of the games, I'm going to go through and analyze them, tell you who I think is going to win and why, using statistics and the bet finders, which you can see on the screen here, and a number of other tools where we can not only analyze team matchups, their offense, defense, passing, rushing, etc., but also analyze stats by position, finding good player props, and then using the bet finders for the trends for players passing yards, passing touchdowns, rushing yards, receiving yards, and touchdown scorers, which you can see all through here. So we're going to go through game by game and break down each one. I'm going to tell you what I'm considering betting in each game, how I think it's going to play out. We'll start with the New York Jets at Minnesota. This game's being played on Sunday night in Australia. They've moved this game, or it's been played over in London in the UK. For this matchup, New York were originally -3.5, but since their kind of embarrassing loss last week against Denver, Minnesota's now come into favorite. They're now -2. Total open 43.5 has moved down to 40.5. The Jets are 2-2 overall in the season, and then the Minnesota Vikings undefeated so far this season. Last week they beat Green Bay 31-29. Definitely keep in mind that in the fourth quarter of that game, when Minnesota were up by plenty, Green Bay came back and scored 22 points to close the gap. That was obviously an element of Minnesota taking the foot off the gas, and Green Bay are capable of scoring when they get their offense rolling, but are still able to win the game, but they did leave it a little close to comfort. Looking at how these sides match up, you'll notice firstly, Minnesota are the #1 overall rated side, #3 in offense and #3 in defense. They're doing it on both sides of the ball. They're the #1 passing offense. You can see yards gained per pass attempt ranked second, and yards gained per completion ranked fourth. Both key numbers, and then they also have a strong running game around league average, and then defensively, opponent drive score percentage ranked first in the league in this category, whereas for the New York Jets, their drive score percentage ranked 20th in the league. So this is where there's a key difference between the two sides. Minnesota, the better offense and defense. New York, their offense has really been struggling, and definitely need to turn around, but I don't think this is a great situation to turn around. Denver, who they played last week, is a really good defense, but they've had 2 games at home leading to this. They beat New England, which is nothing special, and then losing to Denver last week. Their other win against Tennessee, where it was kind of a close game throughout that game, one-score game throughout. And then in week 1, losing to San Francisco. I still think there's like a bit too much hype around the Jets, and Minnesota can keep their run going and make it 5-0 to start the season. Carolina at Chicago. Chicago opened -5.5, has moved down to -4, and the total has moved 42.5 down to 41. Carolina are 1-3 coming to this game. Chicago 2-2. The key for this matchup is Carolina have a number of key injuries on defense, so Chicago should be able to get their offense going this week. They scored 24 last week versus the LA Rams, which was equal their highest score on the season as week 1 versus Tennessee. Carolina's only win this year against the struggling Las Vegas Raiders back in week 3. Aside from that, they've been pretty poor. They hung around a little bit against Cincinnati, but were never really in the game last week. With those injuries on defense, I think, yeah, Chicago should be able to get their offense rolling. Back-to-back home games for them in this situation. And this is a really important game for them to win, to go to a winning record overall in the season, make themselves 3-2, especially considering that they're at home. And if you look through their matchups overall this season, they've been in the game in all 4 of them. They haven't been like hammered or anything. And against Carolina, which since they're like Andy Dalton taking over a quarterback, the expectation of Carolina has improved dramatically. However, they didn't really do that much last week at home against Cincinnati. Chicago clearly are the better defensive side. They're very good at stopping the pass. Fairly good, kind of league average against the run, but overall clearly the better defensive side, and they should be able to get that offense going with those injuries. So I like Chicago to win. I probably wouldn't lay the -4 points. I prefer them on the money line as a betting option. I kind of made it a little bit more of a point this year to stop laying points with favorites if I can help it, or if I can find a better way around doing it. In the NFL, there's so many games that are fairly close, and teams that are down, and the team leading lets them back into the matchup late. So always definitely cautious of that. And so, I'm more than happy backing teams to win games outright, but always cautious of laying points, especially once you get in that 4, 5, 6, and 7 and beyond kind of range. And I think below that, below 3 is generally okay, but that's just an approach I'm taking this season. Baltimore at Cincinnati. Cincinnati opened this game 1.5-point favorites. The line switched around to Baltimore now -2.5, and the totals moved up from 46.5 up to 48.5. Both sides coming off wins last week. The Bengals beating Carolina on the road 34-24 to get their first win of the season. And then Baltimore absolutely hammered the Buffalo Bills, who were undefeated going into that game, to go to now 2-2 on the season. That was definitely Baltimore's best performance overall this year, and just really dominated Buffalo on the ground. This is a divisional game between these two sides. And, looking at how these teams have played this year, Baltimore should win. And with them currently $1.70, it seems like a little bit trappy to me. Like they want you to back Baltimore, but Cincinnati are going to get up and win this game. With that in mind, there is a different way I want to approach my bets. And it's looking at how each side is going to be able to win this game. And firstly, for Baltimore, their passing offense is kind of league average, not that great, where their rushing offense is clearly best in the league. Number 1 in yards per attempt, number 1 in yards before contact, and still ranked 4th in the league in yards after contact. Then for Cincinnati, the rely heavily on their passing game. Their rushing game isn't too bad, but definitely more so of a passing offense. And then when you look through the defensive metrics, Cincinnati, a terrible rush defense, bottom 10 in the league. And then Baltimore, their passing defense, isn't that great, especially in these categories: yards gained per pass attempt and pass per completion, averaging almost 12 yards per completion. Both bottom 10 in the league, where their rush defense is best in the league. So pretty much the recipe for success for both sides is Baltimore on the ground running the ball. That's through Lamar Jackson at quarterback and also Derrick Henry at running back. And then for the Bengals, Joe Burrow passing the ball. Feel like those 3 plays you can definitely target. It's going to be how this game's played out. Baltimore need to run the ball. Cincinnati need to pass the ball. And those players should be able to generate the numbers to go over their prop lines. And I feel like this is a really simple game. Don't get involved in the head-to-head. Play the props as the better betting option. Buffalo at Houston. Houston open -1. The line has stayed there, and the total has stayed at 47. So pretty much no line movement on this game. Both sides 3-1 to start the season. Buffalo won their first 3 games and looked very impressive. They scored 34, 31, and 47. Then last week against Baltimore only scored the 10 points, losing 35-10. And then the Houston Texans won their opening 2 games against Indiana and Chicago, then were blown out by Minnesota and bounced back last week against Jacksonville with a 4-point win. They weren't super impressive against Jacksonville, and the Jaguars still yet to win a game. So there's a slight question mark, and I feel like there really is a little bit of a question mark on both sides. The defense for the Bills is starting to really become a problem. You'll notice there their defensive ranking is 27th in the league. Offensively, though, they are pretty good. Houston's rankings aren't that great either, especially for a side that's 3-1. But that's kind of what happens when you're scraping out wins by 2 points, 6 points, and 4 points against, lower tier opposition. Not super keen to get involved from a betting perspective. I feel like the key factor for this game is whether Houston can get their running game going. I don't think they're going to be able to pass their way through and win this against Buffalo. You'll notice yards gained per pass attempt, number 1 in the league defensively for Buffalo. However, their rush defense is worse than the league and sees ranked 37th in opponent rushing yards per attempt. Houston are without Joe Mixon, so without their starting running back. Cam Akers, who will be taking most of the attempts, it's probably the play you can the best prop angle for this game. If Houston can get that running game going, it'll go a long way towards them winning. However, whether they can do that is obviously a key question mark, as they don't really have a great rushing attack and don't run the ball that well. Yards before contact ranked 13th, so pretty good in that category. And also yards after contact ranked 24. So need to be able to generate those extra yards, break out, and force Buffalo to miss tackles. If we look at their defense, they missed the least number of tackles. So it's not really an ideal situation. This is what I'm talking about with this game is like the angles. There's always like the angles of what kind of is expected to happen. There's question marks whether the players in those positions can take advantage and capitalize on those areas. So this game is a real stay away. And I really want to get another look at Buffalo after last week, see how they come through and perform against another good opposition side. Indianapolis at Jacksonville. Jacksonville opened -1, even though they're yet to win a game. They've moved up to -3. Totals 47.5 down to 45.5. Indianapolis lost their opening two games, then it bounced back with wins against Chicago and Pittsburgh, both by 5 points and then 3 points against Pittsburgh. Jacksonville still yet to win a game this season. They've had 4 losses. 3 of those 4 losses have been by 5 points or less. The only major defeat against Buffalo, where they're blown out 47 points to 10. This is kind of a must-win game for Jacksonville. You can't start the season 0-5 and really expect to come back from that. They're back at home. They've played 3 of the first 4 games on the road this season. And the reason why Jacksonville are favorites is because Indianapolis quarterback Richardson is out and Jonathan Taylor, the running back, is also out. Indianapolis also have injuries on defense, which should make it easy for Jacksonville to get their offense going. When you look at their statistics so far this season, their passing attack has been pretty poor, even though they haven't been throwing interceptions or anything like that. They're just not gaining many yards against the Indianapolis pass defense. If you scroll down here, who are bottom 8, bottom 9 in the league. They should be able to have some success doing that, especially if Ingram returns to the side. Jacksonville's rushing attack, these key metrics here, yards per attempt, ranked 5.7 in the league. If they can get that going against a poor Indianapolis rush defense, that should hold them in really good stead here, especially at home in this situation. So I think Jacksonville can get their offense going, find enough points to win. For the Colts, with Richardson out, Joe Flacco will come in to replace. He filled in, when Richardson went out last week against Pittsburgh and did a pretty solid job and got Indianapolis over the line in that game. Then last season, his numbers were really good. They shouldn't have any problem throwing the ball here against the Jacksonville passing defense. You notice low numbers defensively in all key metrics there. And their rush defense is fairly okay, especially in yards per attempt. And without their key running back in Taylor, that's going to put even more emphasis on the Colts playing the passing game. And against the Jacksonville defense, which isn't great against the pass, they should have some success doing that, but definitely like Jacksonville to be winning the game, but Flacco's passing yards to be really high. Miami at New England. Miami opened -3.5. Sorry, it's moved down to -1, so the gap has closed. Total is 45.5 all the way down to 35.5. Neither of these sides have any offense really to talk about. Miami won their opening game with a late rally against Jacksonville. Since then, have scored 10, 3, and 12 points without Chua in the team. And then New England won their opening game against Cincinnati, but since then lost to Seattle, New York Jets, and the San Francisco 49ers. They've definitely played the harder of the two schedules so far, but Miami have still played Buffalo and Seattle, who are performing really well this season during that period. But both terrible offenses, ranked 32nd for Miami and 29th for New England. And that's why we have a 35-point total for this game. New England have additional injuries on their offensive line. It's going to make it even more difficult for them to score. Miami do get a few key players back and have a lot of room for improvement. But this game, not really keen on betting into it. Suspect it's going to be low scoring, lots of punts. Probably going to have to rely on field goals to put points on the board. So I'm just going to stay out of this matchup. As one, I feel like the market is pretty correct. Super low total, not a great deal between these two sides, and a game that could really come down to one play. Cleveland at Washington. Cleveland were -2.5 originally for this game. Washington is now 3-point favorites. Total has stayed at 43.5. The Browns have lost 3 of their first 4 games. The past two, they've only lost by small margins to the Giants and Raiders. And Washington, after losing their opening game against Tampa, have won 3 straight against the Giants, Bengals, and Cardinals last week, scoring 42 points. They've scored now 80 points across their past 2 games, both of those being on the road. They get back at home here. The question, obviously, is can they replicate that offense against Cleveland? Now, there's a big disparity between the offenses for these two sides. Washington, the number 1 rated offensive side, Cleveland ranked 30th. And, over the past few years, we've always known Cleveland to be a really good defensive side. And their numbers this year are better than Washington. Washington, one of the worst defensive sides, both against the pass and against the run. However, Cleveland overall haven't been that great. So the way I can see this game playing out, I'm leaning towards Washington winning at home. Don't think Cleveland have enough points in them, even against this Commanders defense. But I'm leaning towards Washington winning and it being a high-scoring game. Feel like Cleveland will find some points against this defense, but not enough to keep up with the Commanders, who've been really strong offensively. There is kind of where, like, well, is this a tougher matchup than for Washington than their previous couple of games against Arizona and Cincinnati? But overall, ratings-wise, both Arizona and Cincinnati are better defenses this year than Cleveland. So with that in mind, that's why I'm leaning towards the Commanders to be winning and this game to go over the total. Las Vegas at Denver. Denver opened -1.5, moved out to -3, and the total opened at 42, is now down to 35.5 points. This is a very interesting game. More injuries for Vegas than they kind of really know what to do with. Makes it very, very tough for them, especially on offense against this Denver defense, which is number 1 in the league. And if, they're really able to limit the Jets last week, keeping them to just 9 points the week prior, keeping Tampa, who are another pretty good offensive side, to just 7 points. Pittsburgh to 13 in the week prior. They're now 2-2 on the season, get a really good opportunity to go 3-2. Las Vegas have been very inconsistent. At home, they've played their last 2, now go on the road against Denver. Feel like this is a really tough matchup for them. I don't think they're going to be able to score many points here. They have no running game and issues with their passing game. The other factor to consider here is Denver are very, very good at getting pressure on the quarterback. If we scroll down here, pressure ranks 7th in the league and blitz number 1 in the league. So against Vegas, who also do get pressured a fair bit, I think it's going to be very, very tough for them. Their overall defensive numbers for Denver are very, very good. Opponent drive score percentage ranked 4th in the league, and then drive score percentage for Las Vegas ranked 23rd in the league. So Las Vegas, can't see them scoring anywhere near 20 points for this game. And if Denver can find 2 touchdowns, I think that'll be enough for them to win the game, tack on a couple of field goals, and they'll win this game on the back of their defense. I think they'll also really look to run the ball here. The running back for Denver, especially against this Las Vegas rush defense, which concedes the 3rd most rushing yards per attempt. That's going to be the key to success there for Denver. Then we have Arizona at San Francisco. The 49ers open -9.5. It's moved down a couple of points to -7.5. Totals moved up from 47.5 to 48.5. This is a divisional game between these two sides. San Francisco have scored 35 plus in each of their last 4 games against Arizona. They come into this on the back of a win last week against New England to put themselves at 2-2 on the season. This is a game they can't really afford to drop, still without Christian McCaffrey in the team. But if they can be 4-2 or 5-2 when he returns, that'll set them up for another playoff run again this season. San Francisco should win this game comfortably. Last week, Washington put up 42 points against Arizona. That was their 3rd straight home game. Now they go on the road. The other issue with that is that Arizona only scored 14 points against Washington, who are the worst defensive side in the league. Now against San Francisco, who are a top 10 defensive side, both against the pass and also against the rush. I think it's going to be very, very hard for Arizona to put up a winning score in this game. Offensively, they just really struggled. They had that one good breakout game against the Rams, put up a score after a good start against Buffalo, but outside of that, offensively have been really, really bad. San Francisco will shut them down, and they'll be able to win this game very comfortably. Also be looking at Jordan Mason's rushing yards to go over. I think if San Francisco get out to a lead in this game, they're going to turn to the run and really look to capitalize on that. Both the pass and rush defense for Arizona is really, really poor. So I think San Francisco should have no issues on offense and put up a winning score in this game. The only issue with the Jordan Mason rushing yards is if it is a blowout, then he may get his number of attempts limited, as what can sometimes happen in this situation. However, I still think he can get 60, 70 plus rushing yards fairly comfortably against this team. The Green Bay Packers at the LA Rams. Green Bay were -1, it's pushed out to -3, and the totals moved from 48 up to 49 for this game. Green Bay 2-2 on the season. LA 1-3. They lost last week against Chicago, scraped out a win in a close game against San Francisco the week prior. Green Bay got off to a really bad start last week against Minnesota, came back late, but not enough to win that game, losing by 2 points. This LA Rams defense is terrible. You'll see here, ranked 26th in the league, but in the overall numbers, every single one of these categories except total plays is near worst in the league. Their pass defense is really poor, and so is the rush defense. That means Green Bay will really be able to get their offense rolling. They had 29 points last week, 30 the week prior against Tennessee. Against Indianapolis, they had 16. That was without Jordan Love in the side, and then 29 against Philadelphia in the opening week. You can easily see Green Bay putting up 25 points in this game, and that'll be well and truly enough to beat this Rams side, which offensively isn't really that great either. Only one game this season where they exceeded 20 points. That was against their divisional rival in the 49ers. So really like Green Bay to win this game. The Rams don't have the offense to win, and Green Bay should tear up the Rams defensively. Green Bay ranked number 2 in the league in yards per play, and against the poor defensive side, that's going to be very, very hard to stop. They'll just be getting first down after first down. Their third down conversion rate is fairly high, ranked 13th in the league at going at over 40%. And then opponent third down conversion here for the Rams, ranked 30th in the league at 50%. I think a majority of drives Green Bay are going to score on, and that'll be enough for them to win this game and win it very comfortably. Really like them to be winning here against LA. The New York Giants at Seattle. Seattle open -3. It's out to -7 with injuries for New York. The total for this game was 44.5 down to 42.5. Seattle should be winning this game at home. They're now overall in the season 3-1. They dropped their game last week against Detroit. Back at home, where they've beaten Denver and Miami so far this season. The Giants 1-3 on the season with the win by 6 points against Cleveland back in week 3. Really struggled last week against Dallas. Not that they were like terrible, but just never really gave themselves a chance to be winning. With Nabers out for New York, and they've also got injuries in their secondary in defense. That should make it very, very easy for Seattle to be winning this game. They rely heavily on the passing game. You notice the most passing attempts and completions in the league, most passing yards per game. Seattle should find plenty of points and consistently work down the field very, very quickly. I'll be looking at Seattle winning, and DK Metcalf's receiving yards go over. He's had 3 straight games with 100+ receiving yards. And then I'd also be looking at Kenneth Walker's rushing. If Seattle get out to a double-digit lead, they're going to turn to the rush. Walker has been pretty consistent overall this season, and against this New York Giants rush defense, which concede the 24th most rushing yards per attempt, should be pretty easy for them to make yards on the ground. Also, the other reason why I feel like it's going to be tough for New York here is if you look at the pressured percentage when passing, ranked 26th in the league there for New York, and then defensively for Seattle, generating pressure on the quarterback, number 1 in the league. So Daniel Jones will be constantly under pressure in this game, probably throw interceptions as well. Seattle should win this game comfortably. The primetime game on Monday, the Dallas Cowboys at Pittsburgh. Dallas open -1.5. Now Pittsburgh are 2.5-point favorites. Totals move from 43 up to 44 for this game. This is a really interesting game because Dallas, who you would have expected at preseason, Dallas will be favored for this game. However, they have injuries on defense, which should help the Steelers' offense start to improve. They've been getting better recently. Last week, they had their highest score of the season against Indianapolis. However, lost the game by 3. Prior to that, they'd won each of their first 3 games. And the Cowboys are now 2-2 on the season. Both their losses have come at home, but both their wins have come on the road, which is what happens here. The problem with Dallas, they have no running game. So you'll notice here these numbers. Yards before contact ranked 22nd in the league. Yards per attempt ranked 30th. And yards after contact ranked 30th in the league. And against Pittsburgh, who are the #1 rush defense in the NFL this season, don't give up pretty much any rushing touchdowns, but opponent rushing yards ranked 86th in the league. This means that Dallas are going to have to rely on the pass. Plus, the fact that they're underdogs for this game, expected to lose. If you look at it like that, if they are trailing, then Prescott's going to have to throw the ball even more. So I'll be looking at Dak Prescott's passing yards to go over, completions to go over, pass attempts to be high. And then you can also look at the receivers, in particular, CeeDee Lamb. If we bring this up, just quickly show you here for this game. So receiving yards, CeeDee Lamb has had 61 plus in all 4 games this season, had over 50 in every game going back to week 12 last season. And then Jake Ferguson, the tight end, didn't play in week 2, had 95 in week 3 and 49 in week 4. I expect that based off of this here for yards per reception to the wide receivers, ranked 32nd in the league. CeeDee Lamb should be able to find the yards, especially after the catch as well. And then also the tight end in Ferguson. Those are the 2 players that I will be targeting there for the Cowboys, alongside Prescott's passing yards. The way it's played, what Dallas is going to have to do to give themselves a chance. They're not going to be able to win this game by running the ball. They're going to have to pass it, especially if they are trailing as well. That's going to set it up even more for the passing props and receiving props to go over. And then the final game, New Orleans at Kansas City. Kansas City 4-0 to start the season. New Orleans 2-2. Kansas City opened -7.5 to down to -5.5. Total is 45 down to 43. Chiefs injuries are starting to mount up, but they still find a way to win games. And like with Kansas City, I'd be very cautious laying points around them. Like all 4 wins they've had this season, 7 points to the Chargers, 5 points to Atlanta, 1 point against Cincinnati, and 7 points against Baltimore. All by 1 score or less. And for this game, I feel like it's kind of no different. Kansas City should be able to get over the line, even with their injuries. They're back at home. They played their last 2 on the road. And then for New Orleans, they won their opening 2 games. They kind of set the world on fire early, 47 against Carolina, 44 against Dallas, and then only managed 12 points against Philadelphia, who have since come out and lost their following game, and then only 24 points against Atlanta when losing that game. And so for New Orleans, can they get back to what they were doing in weeks 1 and 2? Against Kansas City, I don't think so. Kansas City are fairly good defensive side, ranked 12th overall in their defensive ratings, but fairly solid at stopping the pass and also the run. And that's what keeps them in games and gives Patrick Mahomes a chance to win the game on offense. Think Kansas City get over the line here and win. I'd also be looking at the receiving props for Kansas City, and particularly on Travis Kelce. The reason for that is with Rashee Rice out for this game, Checo's already out. So those pass-offs to the running back aren't going to happen like we didn't see again last week. And then Rashee Rice is the key receiver there for Kansas City. He's also out. Travis Kelce had 34 in week 1, 5 in week 2, 30 in week 3, and then 89 yards last week. I think he's going to be the key target again for Kansas City this week. And then we look at the defense by position. Tight end yards per reception, New Orleans give up the most in the league, ranked 32nd at almost 13 yards per reception, which sets up perfectly for Kelsey, and Patrick Mahomes will be looking for him on offense. So that's the way I'm going to be looking at playing the final game of week number 5. So hopefully this video is giving you some insight into how you can approach betting on the games this week. That's why I aim to record these, so then when you're making decisions, you're making smart betting decisions, you're making decisions based off the numbers and the performance trends of how these sides have been playing and what's expected to happen. You know, when I first started betting on the NFL back like over 10 years ago now, I would just look at it and look at who'd been playing who recently, how they've been going, who I think is the better side, and just bet based off of that. Then over the years, using the statistics, breaking down where team strengths and weaknesses are, then I've been able to approach games and find angles to give myself the best opportunity of winning on each game, you know, as opposed to just trying to pick the better team. And if you do that, you can actually make profits on the NFL. If you just bet randomly, like, you're guaranteed to lose. Like, nobody will make money betting on the NFL if they're just betting, you know, either with their heart or just with their instincts. All the lines, especially the line, like the handicaps and totals, are so accurate in this sport that you can't just, you know, guess your way through and expect to bring out profit at the end of the day. So that's why I've started up this series this season of doing a quick preview of every game. So when you look at it, you've heard that couple of minutes spiel about each side, how they're going, how this game's going to play out. So then when you're looking for your bets, you're able to do that in a really smart way. If you want or to see all my bets every single week and get those with the bet finders, you can also get access to all the tools that you see in this video, where you can break down the stats for yourself. Don't need to wait for my video every week. Use the bet finders in your own time, research throughout the week. And then you get also access to all the other tools, prop analysis, the position analysis, the betting data on these sides, who's been covering, favorites, etc., etc. So I'll put the link to the bet finders in the description, so you can start using those for yourself only. You know, at week 5 now, every side's played 4 games. We've got a really good base and foundation of information on these teams' performances, which we can use to profit right throughout the rest of the season. So thanks guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss next week's video, and good luck this week.